Hello there to all my followers of darkness, shadow scavengers, and villain aficionados. Welcome, bienvenue. Here I am, Rogol Zaar of Shadows, and this, my friends, is none other than Shadow Talk. Or to be more precise, it's going to be a full-on upcoming DC Universe movie, Men of Tomorrow conversation. Or as I put it in my title, Men of Tomorrow, who might be the next villain in the upcoming DC Universe Men of Tomorrow movie, directed and written by James Gunn himself. Coming out in 2027, I think it's in July, just like Superman. That basically came from James Gunn and other different sources. Basically, it's going to be a team up between Superman and Lex Luthor against this, dangerous threat. Basically, from my understanding, not only is going to threaten like Superman and Lex, but also at the same time, prescription like that. I don't think we're going to see like both of them going up against like villains like I don't know, like Atomic Skull or Parasite, Livewire, Silver Banshee, Toyman, or Metallo, or Amazo. Now I don't think James Gunn will bring those kind of caliber, villains that basically kind of give them the reason why Lex and Superman need to team up, because if you're gonna have a character like Lex Luthor actually teaming up with Superman, it needs to be something big. It needs to be something on a really high level, something that will literally not just simply him, but also at the same time, they also include something beneficial for Lex Luthor as well. So like a threat, basically. So what I basically did was I basically did a list of villains, which are basically divided in like the ones who have like the most higher chance of like actually being the main villains of the movie, with the villains that I personally chosen, not just simply as like a wish list, but also at the same time who I thought could be introduced in challenge to go up against Superman. Now, before I go to the main list, let me make one thing perfectly clear, okay? One thing. It's not going to be them, okay? It's not going to be them. Forget about it, okay? So James Gunn made it clear a couple of times, okay, several times, that Darkseid, it's not going to be not simply the main villain in Men of Tomorrow, but also at the same time the ultimate main bad guy of the DC Universe, or at least the Gods and Monsters part, basically. And also introducing him immediately in Men of Tomorrow, that would be way too early for someone like Darkseid, okay? Way too early. Now, I'm not saying we're not going to see him somewhere down the line in this universe. Oh, absolutely not. We're definitely going to see him, but we're definitely not going to see him in Men of Tomorrow, and definitely he's not going to be like James Gunn said, not the main bad guy in the DC universe. So Darkseid, forget about it. Second, General Zod, forget about him. Okay, it's definitely not going to be him. Okay, and there are a few reasons why. Okay, But first, I just want to be clear that General Zod, it's definitely not going to be the main villain of Men of Tomorrow. Now, of course, people will say, but why not? General Zod is connected to Krypton, Superman, and also be beneficial with Lex Luthor and everything. Oh, yes, I know. Okay, I know. Time out. The reason why General Zod is not going to appear is because he was overused. Okay, he was overused, from like Men of Steel to like the Flash and everything, and after an incredible performance that Michael Shannon gave in Man of Steel, I think for someone like General Zod, I think it's still early to actually introduce him in the brand new DC universe. So the main reason why is because he was overused, and at least for now. And also, I think relieving James Gunn out of these three villains, it gives him a bigger opportunity to introduce villains that were never introduced on the big screen, in general, So yeah, so General Zod also is off the list as well. And the third one, Doomsday. Now I've seen some YouTubers saying, who could would be the main villain for Superman, Man of Tomorrow, and everything. And a lot of people said Doomsday. Why? Okay, why? Because I can give you two big reasons why Doomsday is not going to be one of them. Okay, one of them, just like General Zod, overused, and we've seen like so many times, like we've seen from Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. We saw him in Superman and Lois. We saw him in the series Krypton. Also not to mention the Smallville, but that was like many years ago. So again, Doomsday is also a villain that I personally consider being overused. The second reason why is because we just got introduced to a new Superman, and you immediately want to do like a Death of Superman storyline? That's way too early to introduce a storyline like that. I mean, sure, maybe James Gunn somewhere down the line, he might do like a Death of Superman scenario. Sure, but it's definitely not going to be in this one. Okay, that's why I, with all my heart, I said for all these three, it's not going to be done because of being overused and because it's way too early to introduce them. Okay, especially Doomsday and Darkseid when it comes to like the overall DC universe. So first of all, not them. Okay, it's not going to be them. Put that in mind. Okay, and with that being said, now we can move to the actual list. Now, before I go to the overall main list, I know there's going to be one particular villain who's going to be inside people's minds, and it has been for like a very long time. And now with the clues that James Gunn has given us, like, especially with that picture on the Man of Tomorrow script that he wrote and everything, and also not to mention that for the Man of Tomorrow villain, there are actually some informations that is going to be a villain that will need makeup, prosthetics, and also an actor who's going to be like in shape and everything. So you already kind of narrows it down, like what type of villains actually we might see. So it's not going to be a villain that is going to be full CGI, and it's not going to be a normal like human-like villain. It's going to be a villain that is going to wear makeup, prosthetics, and again, it's going to need an actor who's like fully, shaped and everything. Now, with the clues and everything, let's just go immediately with the first two, okay? So we can just get them off the list and everything. Okay, so the first one is, of course, none other than Brainiac, okay? That's the very first villain that comes to mind to a lot of DC fans all over the world, okay? When it comes to, like, Superman Man of Tomorrow, the first villain that comes to mind is Brainiac, and of course, I mean, what else? This is a fucking villain that everyone wanted to see on the big screen for a very long time, and also I personally would love to see Brainiac on the big screen as well, and also I agree that he's a perfect villain, that will basically combine with Lex and Superman. Like for example, with Superman's side, his connection with Krypton. Now, will James Gunn go with the origin that he comes from a different planet, or will he go with the origin that he was responsible for destroying Krypton? I don't know, but like I said, with collecting knowledge and planets and his connection with Krypton and everything, and also the connection that Lex and Brainiac have, the connection they had in the comics and also in other different genres, more precisely in animation. I mean, I can definitely see Brainiac being the most logical candidate to be the main villain of Man of Tomorrow, because like I said, mainly because like I said a few seconds ago, mainly because his connections with Superman when it comes to Krypton, and also his connection with Lex that was like spread throughout the comics and the especially in animation, especially in Justice League animated series and Justice League Unlimited, So yeah, I can definitely see Brainiac being the obvious candidate, But even still, I would love to see Brainiac. I do hope that it will actually be someone else, which kind of brings me to another one that goes in that same category, and that actually also I think he could be like the other biggest candidate, especially because of the Peacemaker Season 2 thing, and that is, of course, Mongul. Yep, Mongul and Warworld. And the reason why I think Mongul, because here's the thing: a lot of people thought that he's a villain that you could do him only with CGI. Honestly, I disagree. I think Mongul could be done even with prosthetics and makeup. Of course, whichever actor they're going to choose and everything. I don't think he's going to be like all buffed up and everything, just like he is in the comics. But I think I think you can do Mongul with makeup and prosthetics, absolutely. And also, I think he will also be a great opponent against Superman. And also in the same time, you can introduce like a version of Warworld in Man of Tomorrow, and also at the same time, you can connect Mongul with Salvation from Peacemaker season 2 and everything. In which you can make them maybe Salvation could be like either the upcoming new Warworld after basically Mongul got defeated in Man of Tomorrow. Or Salvation itself could be like the actual Warworld, like from the start and everything. But overall, I think that also Mongul could be a great opponent going up against Superman. Now one of my favorite storylines when it comes to Mongul was always from the Alan Moore comic book, but also at the same time the Justice League Unlimited episode where basically Superman, like he attacked Superman in the Fortress of Solitude, and basically the entire connection with that flower that basically put on Superman's chest and kind of has the power of dreams and everything. Like that, I think that could also be a great storyline to kind of explore with Mongul as well and everything. But again, we have to wait and see for sure. But I just wanted to get Brainiac and Mongul out of the way because out of all the villains, like those are the two most obvious candidates. And honestly, I'll be fine with both of them, but personally, I would choose Mongul. Kind of like basically James Gunn introducing like a lighter version of Darkseid, basically. I think so. Yeah, I'll much prefer that if actually Mongul is actually the villain and everything. However, now with that being said, how about this time a team up of villains? Like for example, okay, you don't have to straight up introduce Darkseid, but what about the Darkseid Elite? Like his main members of his army. Like and the reason why I'm saying this because there's a rumor going around that besides Hawkgirl, we're gonna have characters like Supergirl, Lobo, Peacemaker also appearing in Man of Tomorrow. Now, in what way Peacemaker will appear, especially the way how he ended up in season 2, I don't know. But from my understanding, like if you're gonna have those characters, like put in this movie as well. Again, if this is true, because it's just a rumor, it's not official. But if this is actually true, this will actually be perfect. Basically a superhero team up against supervillains team up and everything. So you can have when it comes to the main villain role, you can have a team up of villains. And also. This will also be a great way to kind of introduce Darkseid, but this time like through the Darkseid Elite. And honestly, for this movie, I actually personally chosen like this members. Besides Steppenwolf and Caliban being obvious choices. But I also chose like Amazing Grace, Mortala, Mantis, and also Devillands, who are also like one of the most notable and actually strongest members when it comes to like the Darkseid Elite. Now, some people might say like, okay, with the Darkseid Elite, like what about the female Furies and everything? Yeah, they're not on that level, like in which you will need like Lex Luthor and Superman team up and everything. Now, if you're gonna have a Darkseid Elite like this, then you could also kind of call it like a fair, like a fair wager, why Lex Luthor and Superman basically need to team up and everything. And also like if this actually might come true and everything, again, this is just my speculation and wish list and everything, but also it could be a great way to reintroduce Steppenwolf, but properly this time, because if you're gonna have the Darkseid Elite, out of all of them, the leader is definitely gonna be Steppenwolf, because after all, he is the general of the entire Parademon army and everything. So yeah, like I said, if you don't have to introduce the like Darkseid himself, but you can introduce like members of his Darkseid Elite as an overall first ever introduction, not simply to him, but to Apocalypse, and also at the same time the dark side of New Gods, no pun intended, Darkseid, and everything. So that could also work. in which basically, it first starts as like a team up between Lex and Superman, but then later on, it becomes a much more bigger team. You have, like I said, you had Lobo, Supergirl, Peacemaker, Hawkgirl, and basically all of them together go up against the Darkseid Elite. Now, again, it's too far-fetched, but I thought, like, instead of having just one main villain, how about have an entire team of, like, main villains and everything. And also, by the end, if you want to, you can, and again, it doesn't mean Darkseid has to be the main villain of, like, the entire DC universe. No. But also at the same time, you can introduce, maybe at the end of the movie, you can introduce Darkseid. Now, like, in sort of like a Bruno Mannheim, like a sort of like, way in which, like, maybe Lex gets introduced to Darkseid, or maybe, like, we just simply see, like, a few of the Darkseid Elite members basically giving a report about, like, what happened to Earth and everything. Like there's all sorts of chances how you can introduce Darkseid into the mix and everything without making assumptions that he is the overall main villain and everything. So that's kind of like that's kind of like also one of my choices that I personally chosen. Now the other ones I've chosen. Now we're going to the far-fetched ones. Okay, I'm going with another team up, and that's the Fatal Five. Now the Fatal Five, honestly, could also not be another bigger reason why Lex Luthor and Superman need to team up. But with Fatal Five, again, far-fetched, but I personally would love to see them in the DC universe and everything. But if you're going to have the Fatal Five, that means we're going to have to also introduce the element of time travel. Because, and also to mention the connection with the Legion of Superheroes as well from the future and everything. So, I don't know, far-fetched, but I personally think that the Fatal Five could also prove to be, like, great opponents against Superman and Lex, and also the Emerald Empress was always one of my favorite DC villains. So, again, it's just a wish list, of the villains that I would love to personally see in not just simply Men of Tomorrow, but in the DC universe in general. And with that being said, we go to solo main villains. Now, again, another far-fetched villain, but I would love to see him because he's so underrated in the comics. Atlas. Now, Atlas, I personally think he could be a great opponent against Superman because, first of all, Atlas, if you don't know who he is, he's basically a supervillain who is not just simply a cosmic conqueror, but he's also a gladiator who goes planet after planet after planet, basically challenging the most powerful beings and try to win against them in this fight and everything. And one of his greatest desires that basically led him to Earth was also to challenge Superman. And in one comic, like, he beat the crap out of Superman, and he became, victorious and everything, because one of the Atlas's main goal was always to basically destroy the champion of their planet and kind of like, becoming their savior and everything. I mean, he's kind of like almost like a DC version of Marvel champion of the universe, so to speak. The only difference is that he doesn't have like a wrestling belt and everything, but he's kind of similar to him, But I also thought, like, that Atlas could be, like, a pretty interesting choice for, like, having as a main villain for Superman. Also enough to kind of like have Superman and Lex Luthor teaming up. Now, this other one that I've chosen is, again, very far-fetched, and I think Man of Tomorrow will be too soon, but I still put him on, just for fun. And that is one of my recent favorite villains of Superman, Hell, basically. I don't know how you pronounce his name. Hell, who is basically like a, how can I put this? Who is basically a almost perfect version of Bizarro. Now, instead of being cloned by the DNA of Superman, Hell was cloned by many different DNAs of other different Kryptonians and everything. And if I remember correctly, he was cloned in a lab. I don't recall if it was like Lex Luthor or it was the government or something, but I do know he was given like false memories that he was part of Krypton and like one of the best fighters and everything. And he also had a connection with Jor-El, but I know that those were like all fake data they gave him and everything. But one thing I do know is that Hell was cloned by many different Kryptonians, not just simply Superman or Supergirl. And so I kind of wanted to put him, on the list. But again, I think it's foolish because I don't know. I know. I think if James Gunn wanted to introduce Hell, I think like it will be way too soon because like one of the reasons why I also put him on the list is that maybe at the end of Men of Tomorrow, maybe Lex Luthor could easily use like either through the fight, like for example, if you're gonna have like Kryptonians, like if you're gonna have not just the Superman on board, but if you're also gonna have Supergirl, maybe you can create a storyline where basically Lex Luthor finds their DNA for all the entire battles and everything, and maybe this could be the beginning of Hell, kind of like his overall origin and everything. Because one of the thing is like Hell in the comics, he's way worse than Bizarro, way worse and way more powerful. So I think like that's why I kind of added it. I think like he would be a great opponent against Superman, but again, if you're going to introduce Man of Tomorrow, then his entire origin story will be way different than what it was in the comics. Now, the other like far-fetched villains that I decided that I think they could also play a pretty interesting role as the main villains for Man of Tomorrow is this guy, Rogol Zaar. Now, Rogol Zaar, if you don't know who he is, I think his actual main official appearance was in the Man of Steel comic book, I think it was. But basically, Rogol Zaar, he was basically this powerful alien warrior who kind of like always considered Kryptonians as sort of like a plague, or more precisely, a cosmic plague. And he always claimed to be responsible for the destruction of Krypton. And basically, he came to Earth to eliminate Superman and Supergirl. So basically, again, he's a cosmic conqueror who's on this crusade to destroy Kryptonians. More precisely, Superman and Supergirl. So I felt like he could also be a good reason why Superman and Lex Luthor need to team up. Because I read the Man of Steel comic book, and this guy, he's a force to be reckoned with. He really is and everything. So why not? I mean, I still think Rogol Zaar could be a very interesting villain for Men of Tomorrow. But again, very, very small chances that he's going to be one of the main ones. Another villain that I also chosen, that I still think there are very, very small chances to be the main villains, but Tyrell. Okay, now Tyrell is, again, another villain that was kind of like recently revealed. I think like he first appeared in Superman Earth 1 comic book. And basically, Tyrell, if you don't know who he is, and every time when I see him, he looks like a like a Kiss member on steroids. I think he will be. I think if the band Kiss was still like working today, I think he'll be a great addition to the band. I don't know, because he kind of looks like them, with the makeup and everything. But anyway, Tyrell, basically, he comes from a planet called Theron, I think. And basically, Tyrell, just like Rogol Zaar, like he also was set on a quest to kill the last Kryptonian, as basically he fled from the dying planet and everything. So again, another cosmic conqueror who's on a quest to destroy the last Kryptonian, or one possessed to destroy Superman. So again, the reason why I put the last two villains, because they also kind of sort of in the comics they had like a connection with Krypton in a way, but mostly because I personally thought that there would be a great challenge for Superman, and everything. So that's kind of like my overall list of villains. Now again, I could have put more, and everything, but honestly, like again, it was very difficult to choose. Okay, it was very difficult to choose which villains that will appear in Men of Tomorrow, because again, throwing away Darkseid and everything, it kind of narrows it down and everything. Because again, because again, I don't think they're gonna go up against like villains like Imperiex or Anti-Monitor or Imperiex or Neron or the mother of the Monitor, Worldbreaker, the creator of worlds, and Anti-Monitor. I can't remember her name, But anyway, I don't think they're going to go up against those kind of villains and everything, But so it kind of narrow down, like a very, very short list for me and everything. But overall, I think like those are pretty decent. I know that if the makeup and prosthetics information is true, then the last that kind of also throws away the theories that could be Ultraman and alongside the Crime Syndicate. But for a villain like that, I think you're gonna need the entire Justice League first before you can introduce Ultraman. But just for fun of it, I'm gonna also bring this villain here, Vandal Savage. And the reason why I brought him into this mix is because the whole thing with the metahumans and how long they existed and everything. Because Vandal Savage, fair and square, he is the first metahuman. So I felt like he could also be a really good and interesting opponent going up against Superman. Now again, he would be more of like one of those like Earth like grounded villains and everything. But honestly, the kind of villain Vandal Savage is, I think like he could also be a great villain that to kind of give a reason why Lex Luthor and Superman they're gonna need to team up and everything. So yeah, I think like Vandal Savage could also be a great addition to like the main villain list and everything. So that's one of the reasons I put him in as well. But at the end of the day, I definitely think it's gonna be either Brainiac or Mongul. Again, very obvious choices, especially with Brainiac. And also again with Brainiac, in a way, it makes sense because at the end of the day, Lex Luthor, he's not gonna be the good guy, in Man of Tomorrow. At the end of the day, at the end of the movie, he's still gonna be a villain and everything. And with Brainiac, like not just simply the connection that Brainiac and Lex had, for the comics and animation, but at the same time, Lex could easily use the wreckage of Brainiac's technology or ship, basically, to try to find a way to destroy Superman. Or in the same capacity, basically, how, also kind of like, to use it, against metahumans in general and everything. So that's also one of the reasons why I think, Brainiac could also be, the biggest and like most like logical candidate to take the mantle of the main villain role and everything. But again, beside him and everything, those are kind of like the main villains I wanted to share with you guys. Kind of like my own personal wish list of villains that I think they could be great as like second movie type of like main villains and everything. Even though again most of them are very far fetched, and I understand that a lot of you like never heard of them and everything. But I personally thought that would be a great challenge to go up against Superman in general. And with that being said, here I am done, guys. Rate the video, comment, like, subscribe. Your own personal thoughts. What do you think about Man of Tomorrow movie? Who do you think is going to be the main villain? Who do you think has the biggest chance of being the main villain? What are your personal ideas and theories about the Man of Tomorrow? What do you think is going to happen? Everything in the comment section down below. And of course, as always, stay tuned for more. And yet again, have a nice rest of the day. Stay tuned for more for the second time. And as always, Lord of Shadows, signing off. See you next time, or as I love to say, later, fuckers.